Last question I want to ask each of you is, what is your company doing in standards? What is your company doing to adopt, whether it be a standardization platform or open? What are you really doing? And I'd like to start with John at Brivo. John, what is Brivo doing to adopt standards? What are you doing to do what we've been talking about?
Great question. So, I'll just go back a little bit historically with Brivo, and many people know Steve Van Til, our president and CEO, and he came into the security industry from outside, right? He wasn't in the security industry. And he tells the story about how he was reading some of the security magazines where the industry was arguing that you couldn't use IP for access control panels to communicate because that would not be secure. That our 4-wire proprietary protocols were way more secure than IP connection. And so, you had to keep these things, right? So I think that perspective Steve brought to Brivo. And so we were one of the first companies, if not the first, with a completely IP hardware architecture. We built our first third-party API, I want to say, 15 or 18 years ago. So we've been at that a long time. So it's sort of core to what we do. And it's also something that Jason mentioned earlier. There's a lot of power in repeating integrations as opposed to doing everyone for the first time. And so, on a philosophical level, I think where we find a standard, we'd love to use it because then we don't have to repeat that same integration 20 times. One thing that we've done that started to take off now is OSDP, where I think for the first few years of OSDP, there was a lot of head scratching and people said, what is this thing? And I don't understand it. And I think this is another category where the manufacturers have to innovate. And so, for example, auto detecting OSDP or Wiegand so that you can take the integrator out of the equation. That wasn't something a lot of products did early on, but I think every product pretty much needs to do that now, because in order for the standard to fly, it's got to be easy. And so we've been adopting a lot of standards, but also making sure they can be easily handled by the integrator.
Thank you. Laurie, what is Wavelynx doing for open standards, and what are you doing?
So we're, Wavelynx Technology is a manufacturer of access control readers and credentials, just in case anybody out there doesn't know what Wavelynx does. And so I'm going to start with OSDP since John left off with it. We have been extremely involved in OSDP as it evolves from OSDP to secure channel to, OSDP bootloading of firmware out to the readers. My team is intimately involved with Security Industry Association in, evolving the specification, and in doing so, all of our products are out in front of that whole OSDP. John, you mentioned OSDP auto detect, not to have a commercial here, but our readers came out of the block with the ability to auto detect OSDP, making it very, very much more cost effective as well as easier for the integrators to transition from Wiegand to OSDP. So innovating and doing some things like that, but evangelizing it. We are OSDP verified. It's a new that's a new program that Security Industry Association launched a couple of months ago. And we are right there. We're one of, I think, 4 products on the OSDP verified list. So we evangelize and we walk the walk, right? We don't only talk the talk. We actually are the founders, I'll say, creators of the LEAF specification. We have a lot of cryptography experts on staff. And so we wrote a specification. As you transition from standard proximity to a smart card technology, it's very easy to inadvertently end up in a proprietary situation. And so we wrote this specification LEAF. We launched a website, leafidentity.com, and we put the spec on the website. We claim no intellectual property for the spec. We evangelize it as well, and are working to have it be widely adopted so we can have interoperability. Whether this is actually a standard per se or not, it is yet to be seen. It may become adopted by some standard body and become a standard, but until then, it's the adoption rate makes it a standard. And so again, it's for interoperability. So we are largely evangelists for open interoperability and standards, and we do everything we possibly can as a side job to enable it.
Thank you. JJ, what does Idemia do for open and standards, and how do you guys lean into that so customers can adopt it?
Perfect. So the first thing is we're very involved with the PSIA and working on the play standard. We participate in just about every session. We fly people out all over the country when there are technical meetings that go at a particular location. And we help drive the standards forward because it's very important to us. We currently have integrations into around 35 different access control systems, and the maintenance and the cost of that has just become a crazy amount for us to keep maintaining and looking at. And the standard really helps us solve this problem where we only have to look after one particular integration. Every organization looks after their own one little piece, and the standard takes care of all the rest. And we don't have to worry about the specificities of any particular organization. On the biometric side, we're highly involved with NIST, or the NIST. We submit our algorithms, we submit our templates to the NIST once a year to help promote standards and actually participate in interoperability testing. So we help push and drive interoperability between biometrics as much as we possibly can by making sure there's a strong participation by Idemia. Idemia is also highly involved with the LEAF organization. We actually helped create the biometric portion that exists on the LEAF cards today and helped actually drive what that part of the standard actually looks like. And then from an OSDP perspective, we've also found that out of the box, biometric devices are complicated. That's the easiest way I can put it. And unfortunately, OSDP did not cater for everything that can happen with a biometric device, something that is just not going to happen with a card-based device. So we've been very involved with SIA on the OSDP specification to make sure that there is extendability and things that should be supported when it comes to biometric devices within the access control space.
Thank you. It's funny you keep mentioning NIST. I'm here in Boulder, Colorado, and there's about a mile from my house is a massive NIST facility that I had a number of people fly in for last year that were involved in biometrics and continuing the conversation on some of those standards. Pretty fun stuff. Jason, what is Tyco Johnson Controls doing in standards and open today?
A lot. So, it is a core part of the philosophy and strategy of the company. So, whether it's the NERC, SIP, and energy standards, as JJ was saying, around NIST or even the FICAM and FIP standards, out of that, we actually did an acquisition of a company called Inemetrics. And the focal point of the Inemetrics development has been to standardize the way that the readers and the interoperability with our software works. So brings the high assurance capabilities not just to Inemetric readers, but to Wavelynx readers and other potential manufacturers in an open standards kind of a way. We certainly sit on the boards for SIA as well as PSIA, where as Laurie had mentioned earlier, currently the chairman of the board for PSIA. And again, that's certainly an investment from our company in the seriousness of the standards, right? That comes with, paying board dues and all the sacrifices instead of attending all these meetings and being a real advocate and an influencer of what those standards are. We invested in creating a generic play agent and signed the intellectual property of that over to a neutral party, so it wasn't going to be owned by a particular PAX, right? Then that was an investment made by our company, really showing the seriousness of and the belief that these are the type of things that solve real customer problems and need to come to fruition in a commercial way. And our engagement with LEAF and other elements that really are about creating interoperability and standards across the industry.
Thank you. And I think it's important for the listener to understand a customer can adopt today a Tyco solution next to a Brivo solution, next to an Idemia solution, next to a Wavelynx solution. It's working today. It just needs to continue to be proliferated. Is that accurate from you guys? Would you say that's fairly accurate?
I would say it's more accurate in some cases than others, but certainly whether that be through connections, common connections to some sort of ERP system, where you're ensuring that you have a commonality of sharing personnel. It's been a lot more challenging when it comes to reader and credentials, hence, the need for play and leaf, right? Where companies have started to adopt those, then I think there's more capability than maybe some others that haven't joined those standards.
Yeah, this is great. So again, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to join us here at Inside Access Control today. I think it was a great benefit to all the people that watch, all the people that listen, and hopefully we'll get to continue this conversation of how we can continue to adopt open, how we can continue to adopt standardization and allow continued proliferation of this wonderful access control industry, and how people can continue to help us innovate as well through those standardizations. So thank you, Laurie. Thank you, John. Thank you, JJ. And thank you, Jason, very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks for having us, Rob.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.